Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm John Lucy, the Director of the Asset Sales Office, and I'm going to go over a couple of issues. Thank you all for coming, just to go over some highlights before I kick it to John Rabel, who is going to give us some opening remarks. You all have some folders that you received. The folders include a bunch of different things. There's tent cards to write your names on. There's some training slides for the training sessions 1, 2, and 3. There is 3x5 cards to put your questions on. We'll be gathering those so we can hopefully answer your questions in kind of a formal way. There's some evaluation forms for you all to, after the seminar is done, to let us know what you thought of the sessions. And there's also a list of the places nearby where we actually, you can get some lunch. Also, if you could turn off your phones or set them to vibrate or whatever works best for you. And there's also going to be a speed networking session, which we'll be explaining throughout the day. But there's also, you'll have some presentations from industry folks. And when you're listening to those, you might want to think, hey, this is somebody I'd like to talk to more, and that'd probably be a good person to set up with for the industry speed networking. So now I'm going to turn it over to John Rabel, who's going to make some opening remarks. John is my boss. He is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Finance and Budget here at FHA, and here he's coming right now. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming, and welcome to HUD headquarters in DC. The weather in February can be strange and things, but I appreciate everyone coming. Thank you. My name is John Rabel. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Finance and Budget, and the Office of Asset Sales is part of my organization, and we work together as a team. And we look forward to providing you step-by-step training on how the loan sales work here at housing. So this is one of our objectives here. I'm going to start by introducing the asset sales team. We have John Lucy, who is the Director of Asset Sales. He's right over there. He's a wealth of knowledge, been over 10 years in asset sales. He'll be moderating the sessions this morning. He'll be here for all 2 days. Feel free to talk to him, ask him questions, ask him anything. He'll be around. Pick his brain, do all that. He's good. Next, we have Marlene Robinson and Eric Krebs. Where are they at? Right, there's Marlene and Eric's. He's coming. He just stepped out. They're program advisors in the asset sale office, and they're both subject matter experts, and they will be here for all 2 days. And so you ask them any questions and talk to them. They'll be running some of the training sessions and next 2 days. So and they'll be moderating the panel discussions. Also in the asset sales office and presenting today is Emily Heller. She's over there. There's Emily in the back there. She's going to be leading the training discussion on the settlement and servicing with Eric. The awesome asset sales office includes Sinai Cham, Harold Eccles, and Akeisha Joyner-Wiggins. Can you hold your hands up? There they are. And you may have already seen or spoken with them this morning, but can you three raise? Already did that. Okay. The asset sale team is also has other people doing the work with them, not just in their office, and other people at HUD are involved in getting these assets done. There are a claims office, with Arvo Harrelton. He runs the claim team there. He's involved. We have our accounting with Renee Brown and her team, and we have Amy Brown and OGC and her team. So to make the asset sale works, we have other people within HUD who works with it too. Additionally, there are 3 teams that provide support for asset sales offices, and members from those groups are here today. We have the team from Verdi, who help coordinate the seminar, and also are the transaction specialists for the single-family loan sales. The team from Novad Consulting, who's the program financial advisor, and the team from MBI, the risk assessment contractor. All those are here today. Before we get started, just a quick go over some of the objectives for the seminar. As I stated, the goal of the seminar is to educate nonprofit organizations on the HUD single-family note sale process. Educate nonprofit organizations about the entire life cycle of the HUD single-family loan sales processes, end-to-end. So that's one of our objectives. The other objective is to introduce nonprofit organizations to potential industry partners for team for teaming opportunities. Okay. There's also, as John mentioned earlier, it's going to be a speed networking at the end of today's 3:30 session, where if you hear interesting things you like, at the table you'll be able to ask questions and get more information, more detailed to what you're looking for. So if you hear a presentation you like, sign up for the speed dating. That'll be done right after the 3:30 session. There'll be 4 15-minute speed networking sessions. And I'd like to, okay. I'm going to take you right now to John, and John will start us off a little bit. Thanks.
So there's been a little bit of a scheduling conflict, so we're going to maybe get to talk to Biniam later on, but we're actually right now going to go to the first training session, and that is going to be with Eric Cribbs and Marlene Robinson talking about the single-family loan sale program, the stabilization outcome process, and loan eligibility. And thank you again, John, for kicking us off. And here are Eric and Marlene.
Good morning. I'm Marlene Robinson, the Asset Sales Office.
Good morning, Eric Cribbs, Asset Sales Office. So my role in the SLS program, the single family sales program, is project management role. So many of you have interfaced with me historically, and many of you will interface with me going forward. Is that better? Better? Apologize. I think we might be switching gears again. We may have. I apologize. Biniam's here, so let me switch gears here. We'll do an introduction here to bring Biniam in. I think Marlene will just stay, maybe.
Right, yes.
We'll bring Biniam to the podium to do some opening remarks, and then we'll get started on the session.
So as you'll see, the asset sales office needs to think on their feet. So we have Biniam Gabre. He is our FHA commissioner acting currently, and he's going to give us a few comments about the asset sales program and other things too. Thanks, Biniam.
Thanks, John. Hi there. How are you guys doing this morning? I heard, what was that? You are? And? Pretty good? Excellent. Well, we have been waiting for a couple months to have this day, and we're very, very excited to have you guys join us. And I want to thank John Lucy, John Rabel, and the rest of the asset sales team, Janet Goldrick, for getting this day organized. This is something that's very, very important to us. As John has mentioned, this program, the overall DASP program, is critical for us, both from the perspective of the fact that it's helping us improve the financial health of the FHA program, which allows us to make sure that it's a cost-effective program for many borrowers in this country, which, for example, has allowed us to reduce premiums. The fact that the president was able to announce that, and that we were able to do that, was partly driven by the fact that this program has been so successful, but also because it's been great for borrowers in many ways. That this has become a sort of for borrowers that are going through the delinquency process, that are struggling to make their payments. The DAS program has ended up being in many ways for those borrowers as an opportunity for them to avoid foreclosure. And so we're very excited about this program. And in particular, the neighborhood stabilization outcome pools, where we've designed it in a way to help maximize benefits to communities. The program has many safeguards in place, and that those who purchase NSO pools are required to fulfill a number of requirements. And so generally we feel very good about the program, but there are lots of things that we can do to improve it, including ensuring that we have a diverse set of buyers, in particular from the nonprofit sector. And so we are very, very interested in not only providing you the information and the tools to be successful in the program, but also in making sure that we get your feedback on making it better. And so to me, this is both an opportunity for for us to provide you that information, but also to hear from you. And so we're very excited about this day and in partnering with you. So thank you for making it out here, and I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. All right, so again, I want to echo Biniam's sentiments there. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to see all you folks out in the audience. So we're going to get started this morning by going through the first session here with Marlene and myself and giving you an overview of what the program really is all about. So the morning sessions here are an attempt by us to demystify the program a bit, really show you how the program works from start to finish. So we're going to spend the morning just talking about really mechanics and blocking and tackling on how the program works. We'll switch gears in the afternoon, and we'll have our industry panelists come in, and they'll help give some real-world examples on how this has worked for them, ways that they see partnerships happening. So I think the sessions will be, you'll really engage with those guys more. For our session, I think it'll be a little more lecture style, so Marlene and I will be really talking to you guys. If you have questions, there's some 3x5 cards in your folders. Feel free to jot them down. What we'd like to do, I think, is keep moving with the presentations this morning. We'll collect those cards from you guys, and we'll aggregate them. And I think our current plan will be, if there's a little time left at the end of the morning session, we will start to address those. But likely what's going to happen is tomorrow morning, as we come back together in the morning, there's a session built in for us to aggregate those questions and then do some Q&A with you guys. So today's, like I said, this morning, hopefully we'll just get through these sessions. We split the presentation into two parts. So we divide the overall task as sort of before our bid day and after our bid day. So you'll see the sessions aligning with that this morning.
And let me just make one quick point about the questions. So you see microphones around the room. That's for the industry panel sessions. So during those sessions, right after those sessions, we'll take those questions while the industry partners are still here. But relative to Eric is talking about on the note cards, that's relative to the actual training sessions 1, 2, and 3 that you'd put those questions on the note card. We will try to answer them, but we may answer them during that formal question and answer session tomorrow.
Okay, great. So in your handouts, in your packets, we're going to start from the first presentation. So the first slide here you'll see is the overview slide, and we're going to move into, see if we can get this to move forward for us. Okay. So the slide here that what we're going to start on really is the purpose and the objectives of SFLS and NSO. So let me start with sort of the concept of, what is SFLS and what is that acronym? What are we talking about? So the Single Family Loan Sale Program, we've been working on this program for many years. It was started actually even before the 2010 date on the board. So we have a lot of different ways that we've worked through the process. We spent years developing a sale program. And in 2010, we really changed direction and found a way that we think works for today's market. And the way we utilize the program is that we can accept an assignment on a mortgage from our servicers. And from that assignment, we can sell that out to you folks prior to foreclosure. And thereby, this is a tool in our toolbox, right? So it's one of the things we can do to help reduce our losses. It minimizes the time we hold the loans on our books. It has an indirect effect here by helping borrowers for certain. These are folks who are otherwise headed for foreclosure in our process. If we can jump in and stop that process and sell the note to you all, we think that provides a benefit to them as well. And ultimately, this is an opportunity for you guys to acquire these assets at prices that are affordable to you all, and still be able, hopefully, to find a way to make this work for the borrowers that are still in the houses, and for you guys to be able to find a monetary solution that works for you as well. So we use the term SFLS, so that's the Single Family Loan Sale Program. So it's organized as being that's the larger umbrella that we're working under. You'll see this acronym NSO, the Neighborhood Stabilizing Outcome Portfolio. So that's really a piece that we talk about in how we organize the sales. So the sales themselves are organized under, both will be SFLS sales. We have sort of a national platform, we call it at the moment, and the NSO platform. And part of what we're doing in that larger organization is the national sales are going to be less geography based. They're really going to spread the assets across the whole country. They're generally going to look larger, and they're going to have the least amount of loan sale restriction on the back end as you purchase it. So those loans have shall avoid foreclosure for the 6 months is the prohibition in the legal agreement as you purchase those from us. And if we talk about NSO, the neighborhood stabilizing outcomes, we've pulled those to be more geography-based at the moment. And so they'll be targeted. You're going to see certain cities or MSAs represented there where we think that area needs some help. It comes together. There's many factors in how that determination is made. But from the determination that we found an area that makes sense, we're going to overlay a loan sale agreement on those that has more restrictions. And we'll get into that a little deeper about what those restrictions are and how we interpret those parts and pieces in the slides to come. But so as you hear us referring to the NSO, the neighborhood stabilizing, those are generally going to be smaller with the higher restrictions. SFLS or national pools we sort of use on the other half, or the larger pools less restrictive. The next slide here really shows a snapshot of what we've covered in the last couple years under the program. So there's a couple things I'll point out in the slides here. The upper slide shows these national pools, and you'll see that the balance at the moment fits in something like an 80-20. So generally, to date, we've sold 80% of loans under the national side and on 20% on the NSO side. So that fits roughly for loan count and UPB. So if you look, we're probably now, this slide actually doesn't include our most recent action. So we did a couple more actions beyond this slide in the fall of 2014. So including those actions, it really puts us closer to almost $20 billion in total sales volume. We had two deals that we did in the fall. So we did, in September, we sold 14,000 more assets into the national deal and another 5,000 in our NSO program. So that was roughly $2 billion on the national and $1 billion on the NSO. So I think as you see and look for a little trend here, you can see the growth of the program. We really, Biniam mentioned earlier, the program has great successes. We really like it. We're trying to expand. We're developing it more. I think over time, we're still shooting for, the levels that you see here. It has now hit a bit of a plateau. We think this level that we're going at, something like maybe 20,000 assets and something like $5 billion in each of our sales is about our target level at the moment. So you'll see that fits with where we were in the fall. It will fit hopefully with our next action as we roll out our next action here in the spring in 2015. So here's, as you're looking, again, we split the loans between the national and the NSO, and you can see it here with this 80-20 balance. But I think over time that balance is going to shift, and we're actually going to add more loans in the NSO side. So hopefully that, to all of you, that sounds great. We're thinking that area fits with generally the position you guys are in. That is more the attractive piece of this. Not to say that national won't work for some of you. It may very well, but the NSO generally aligns with you all. And if you look at the trend here, another thing I'll point out is that in the November deal, this gives you an idea of where the cities have been. So there's a couple things here. These cities aren't the cities that we have to go to. They're not cities that are locked into any absolutes. They're cities that we found synergy with over time. So we're going to, as we're looking for loans and we're talking to folks about what they're interested in, the reverse inquiry from you all is helpful. We really do like to know where you guys are looking for loans and where it would work for you all. Us making those decisions here in the building and hoping we have an investor on the outside who's interested in those, it isn't the best way to do it necessarily. So we're interested in talking with you all, and that's part of the reason you're here today. We love this reverse inquiry. Help us see where you guys think there's a need, where you guys can help. I can't promise that we can make a pool for everyone, but certainly to the extent we have cohesiveness and agreement across where there's a need, I think we're certainly going to look to see if we can find assets that fit for that level and teams that are interested in participating. So with that said, the sale we did in November had, we think, something for everyone. We had a few pools in the action we did in November that were really very small. We had one pool in particular was under $1 million. It was 13 assets in the Buffalo region. I believe $895,000 was the total UPB. So we can go small. to the extent that I can't do 50 of those pools in every action, that would be overly sort of cumbersome on the operation side. But to the extent that that makes sense for some of you guys, let us know. Tell us what the loan counts that are right for you, and we'll help try to develop those pools. On the flip side, we went as big as I had a couple pools in there that were almost 1,500 assets, and that would equal maybe $300 million worth of UPB. So even within the NSO spectrum, we can cover quite a bit of ground on the pool size for your interest. So again, the reverse inquiry is great. The eligibility on loans, which we're going to drive into a little bit further, is even if you have an interest, we're going to have to make sure we have loans that fit. So don't necessarily think, if I call the asset sales office and say, hey, we really like to do 10 in Buffalo again, that we can make a match. But we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll look through the portfolios of our teammates and the P-servicer teams that give us the loans, and we'll dig deeper. So that said, I'll switch gears a little bit here, and we'll get more into the program itself and how the transaction runs. So generally, as I talk about the sale program with folks, the timeline helps the discussion, we think. So our sale program will work with a pivot in the middle around the actual bid itself. So the chevron arrows at the bottom will help sort of align that with us as we're talking about this with you guys today. So the program's going to pivot with these steps broadly across, call it 3 steps before, 3 steps after. And the pivot is around the day that you actually bid on the assets. So timeline-wise, we've been running something like 60 days before the bid and 60 days after. So the entire timeline roughly runs on like a 4-month spectrum. There's a little bit more of a tail on the back for the servicing piece that will transfer that we'll get into a little later. But if you envision the process that we're talking about as being a 4-month process, the morning session here today is really talk about the first 2 months of that process. It's how do we find loans, how do we get them out there for you guys to look at, and then how do we get to the actual bid itself? And then the session later this morning will talk about if you are the winner, where do we go from there? So I think we were talking rough counts. It is 100,000 total notes to date. We talked a little bit about how many loans we've done per pool. So the next piece that I want to go to is where we really get the loans. So we're going to start with this. This is where we kick it off. So for me to engage the sale to really begin, the first step that we're going to have to take from our side is to figure out what assets we can sell. So these aren't assets that FHA has on their books at the moment. These are assets that are sitting with our participating servicers. These are a sample of who these servicers are that have loans that they will give to us. So by way of a contractual agreement with each of these teams, we will reach out to them and say, we're looking to do our next sale action. So we'll tell them, we can use 2015 as an example. We would reach out to them, say this week to start the process, and we'd say, we're really interested in doing our next sale. The parameters of what the sale eligibility are defined. We're going to give them to them, and I'm going to go into them in detail in just a couple of slides. And we'll say to them, what loans do you have that fit these eligibility parameters? So that's really step one, and it engages them to start looking through their universe of loan, through their book, to figure out, do I have loans that will fit with what FHA is looking for to sell in this process? So you can see we pretty much have, there's 23 teams up here. I would say we've participated with more than 30 teams. There's teams that come in and out of the process, as I was just mentioning. Folks are going to look through their portfolio and say, at the moment, there's too much going on internally for me, or at the moment, I sold you all the loans I had last sale, and I don't have more this time. But generally, we're going to have north of 20 teams, 25 teams participating with us each sale. And there is no lack of supply. These guys have plenty of loans. It's really about defining what we want to acquire from them to sell back to you guys. So you can see names represented on the screen. Bank of America has historically driven the largest volume from these sales. They probably control 50 or 60% of all loans we've sold. Then you have Citibank and JP Morgan, Chase, and probably Wells Fargo as being the next tier back of another 25%, and the last 25% is really mixed across these smaller names you may see up here. So the sales will be organized generally. To date, we've organized them by these servicers, so you'll see as we offer these pools out, we'll try to keep them homogeneous from the standpoint of we'll keep the Bank of America loans together, we'll keep the Wells loans together. But we'll reach a point where it says, the 16 through 20 on this screen all have, say, for instance, 50 loans to give me. So if that's the case, we'll probably aggregate that. We'll call it a mixed pool. So in that case, if you were to buy that pool from us, you would interface with multiple servicers. If you were to buy the other pool from us, you would essentially, your match would be to a single servicer. So things to be aware of as we talk about this, there's operational differences, clearly with how many teams you interface with, and the nature of the pools will change depending on who's putting the loans in. But this is a pretty good representation of all the different teams you may see, size, so we cover the full gamut. There's really guys on here who have given me single-digit loans all the way to tens of thousands of loans to Bank of America. So we cover the full spectrum. So as we're reaching out to them, as I mentioned here, the next step is to give the team. So I said it was a contractual relationship. So as we reach out to the servicing teams of the world, we're going to say to them, here's the loans we'd like to sell in the next action. So to set that parameter around what we'd like to sell, we use an eligibility chart. So what makes the loan eligible is some of the things are fundamental to us. They are at the base level. That's what we're like our mandate is. We can't change some of those. Others are program level overlays where we've decided that's the right piece for us to sell. So you can say, I think we have everything up here as a representation of the last few sales. So in the next slides, we'll go through, and I'll highlight some. I maybe won't hit all, but as we go through these, you'll see some of them, and the ones I point out, are important and near and dear to our heart. So on the first slide here, the loans have to be in default by definition. That is part of this. So just so you guys understand, that's the selection of loans. We're not selling the performing notes. These need to be in default for our program. And we define default in our world as being at least 6 months due and unpaid, unless they're vacant or abandoned, and then we can go back to 3 months due and unpaid. So you'll see that's the toggle there for the minimum in default. Now, the maximum in default can go fairly deep. We have, at this point, really no official maximum. There are some pieces that we'll get into the intricacies of later where we discourage the ones that are really, really delinquent from the portfolio in general. Loss mitigation, very important to us. So the loss mitigation piece here, we're setting the servicers out to say that you've done everything here. These aren't active loss mit. There should be no in-flight mods. There shouldn't be short sales active on these. These have gone through the FHA waterfall, and they've reached a point in their life cycle where there really doesn't appear to be anything left for these folks. They will be headed for our conveyance program, one of our other tools, or the claims without conveyance of title program. Both of those are foreclosure executions for us. So this, by overlaying this, what we've hoped to do is we've exhausted all loss mit. Everything's been done for these folks that we can, but prior to actually taking them through to foreclosure, hopefully this is one last chance. So hopefully you guys will see it the same way. Many of these folks just, the FHA waterfall tool maybe didn't offer enough for them. There wasn't room to do what they needed to get them back to a performing status, to keep them in the house, and hopefully that's where you guys can find some value and make this work. As we continue on, and again, this is, I probably should have mentioned, as we're looking at the chevrons on the bottom, we're talking really the first 30 days here. So I divided the sale into months here, and we're really in month 1. So as we're talking about this is our month 1 interaction with the servicers, figuring out which loans we want. Here I'll point out just a couple things. Teams in general, the first bullet here is about our servicers not putting loans in our sale and then taking them back out, and just this repeated loans coming in our sale and loans going out of sale. If we offer loans to you guys, we want to close on them. So unless the borrower has asked for loss mitigation or the loan has moved in a status that was really not a P-servicer change, we ask that the servicers who give us the loans, that they stay in the deal and they go all the way through the deal. We don't want them coming in and out of the deal. You guys don't want to have to keep bidding on them over and over again. We don't want to have to keep selling them over and over again. So the first bullet here you see is just that unless there's been a macro action by the borrower, the loans in the sale should stay in the sale, and we don't want to see them in a subsequent sale. The second 2 bullets here I'll just point out quickly are, we're not looking for loans in litigation either. We're not trying to sell you guys the loans that are sort of known to have a litigation problem up front. So we're excluding those. Similarly, if it's got an indemnification agreement with HUD, we're not going to pay that claim anyway, so let's not get them on the list for you guys. It's an attempt to make sure that everything we offer to you all as we get to pooling and we're selling loans, these are really loans that we can get to you guys. It's not price discovery or any of those type of actions. These are loans that we really want to sell to you, and barring any change in the borrower's status that would move them back into a loss mitigation status, these are loans that are going to transfer to you if you're the winner. How are we doing on time? So we'll switch here. surchargeable damage in sort of a similar vein to litigation, we're not looking for loans that have damage. If the underlying property has damage, this program doesn't generally fit for that. Our program is designed to really work through the paper side of the transaction, and we're trying to steer away from those assets that have property and underlying collateral issues. So again, it's not perfect. We'll get into a section about talking through our reps and warrants about the loans. Some are going to happen, and we try to stand behind those. We'll take those back. But generally, the idea is that we're trying to exclude them from the front of the transaction as we source them, and they shouldn't flow to you. There'll be exceptions, and we have ways to deal with those. Again, it shouldn't be seized, not condemned. Again, anything that really slows this process and makes it terribly difficult for you as a buyer to get to the ultimate ownership of the property, or that would cause a problem in the title chain, we're going to steer away from those. The foreclosure bullet here, I'll stop on briefly. Again, this date doesn't necessarily align with the current transaction. It aligns to a prior transaction, but the idea is we don't want it hitting foreclosure in the process here either. If we're marketing loans to you all, certainly they can be in the foreclosure queue, but we don't want them to actually reach the terminal state of foreclosure in the midst of you buying them. That we ultimately won't be able to sell you those at all. So we're asking the servicers to go through and move the dates, postpone them if it makes sense, or not. If the loan already has a foreclosure date, then let's not talk about it for this sale action. So this is an exclusion mechanism that says once we've set a range of parameter dates around the sale, so we'll say from that month 2 to month 4 as the transaction's moving. If a foreclosure is going to happen in that period, let's not include it in the sale action. Bankruptcy, again, same idea here. Right now, the process is not to sell you all bankrupt notes. There's one exception here. If it is a 13 that someone is not performing on, that would count to be, again, it's in default with us. It's in default on the non-performing 13. There are some of those in there, and they may come through the pipeline. So that is, so we'll take this structure. So now we've gone through some of these eligibility, and the servicers are now going to comb through their portfolio and look for how many loans will now fit. So they'll funnel all those to us, and we'll begin our process on the aggregation side. We'll take that in. Our contractor, the Verdi team that's working with us now, is taking that data in, and behind the scenes, they're going to start creating a data room for you all. So this data room, 15 minutes total? Yeah. Okay. So this data room that we've created for you all is the aggregation site for all this information about the loans. So we're going to put that into a site, and behind the scenes, we're going to start working that. So what you all need to know then is, as we're building that together, you all need to start becoming qualified for the process. So you should start thinking, oh, HUD's announced a sale. We're going to we'll probably put out a blast email to you all. It'll be on our website. We'll announce the sale's happening. With that will come a qualification statement and a confidentiality agreement. And both of those two pieces you're going to want to go through. The confidentiality agreement contains pieces around, we're going to be sharing with you sensitive information. You have to protect it. Destruction clause in there. It says if you're not awarded loans, you need to dispose of the pieces. It says you can't contact those borrowers. So read through that. Get comfortable with the confi. Those we've done on an annualized basis. They match with our fiscal year. So once you've qualified in for on the confi side, you can keep that confi active for a full year. The qualification piece, Marlene is going to jump into a little bit in a moment, so I won't dig terribly deep into that. But you all need to be starting to build out this qualification process with us, so that as we're building the data room and the data room becomes available, you guys can now move into that data room and start reviewing the assets to decide if you want to purchase. So in addition to the confidentiality agreement, we have a qualification statement. In the qualification statement, I'm going to hit on some of the financial pieces here quickly. It says that to be qualified, we want to work with a team that has at least this $5 million in assets. You're going to need an asset manager, a property manager. They need to have some net worth there as well. We need to know essentially that you as our customers understand what you're buying from us. I jumped a little bit ahead there. So we're going to jump into now what the NSO requirements are. So as you're deciding to qualify into the deal, one of the pieces we're going to give you up front is a document, our loan sale agreement. So even before you may look at the loans, it makes sense that you guys are going to want to understand what is going to be required of you if you do buy these loans. So there are outcomes associated with the NSO side. I think we mentioned here 50% of loans we're going to sell you if you buy an NSO pool need to meet one of our 7 outcomes. So these are the neighborhood stabilizing outcomes that we've talked a little bit about here. And you'll have 48 months to do it from the second settlement. These outcomes include, I'll run through them, and we're going to go through some deeper slides here. Reperforming notes, Sales to owner occupants, there's some conditions in there we'll talk about. A held for rental status, gift to a land bank, sale to an NSP grantee, paid in full, and there's sort of an other catch-all if you guys want to petition us for a change, we have a way to talk about that. So we're going to ask for quarterly reporting to make sure that you're living up to these standards over the 48 months, and Marlene will get into that a little more as well. And in the end, I will say there are penalties. At the end of the day, if you don't meet the 50% standard, there are penalties, and I don't want to de-emphasize them, but emphasize them just to let you guys know. If you miss by 10%, there's some penalties based on the gross profits of the transaction. I'm sorry, the net profits of the transaction. If you miss by more than 10%, then we start talking about taking back some gross level financial penalties from you. So we'll dig deeper, but in the loan sale agreement, we just want to point out that these outcomes are you're going to need to reach the 50% level, and there are penalties for not reaching them. I'm going to flip through, and I'll go through these somewhat quickly. So these are the outcomes themselves, the NSO outcomes. We'll start with a reperformer. We're defining reperformer as 6 months consecutive on-time payments to give you credit. The trial payments can count towards that if it's the same terms or better. And they need to be permanently modified. So if you reach those two hurdles, then that's one loan that fits the positive side of your 50% need. And all these are sort of similarly. Each loan counts as just one. It can go positive or negative. It only really fits in one outcome. There's not cross. You don't get 2 points for doing any combination of outcomes. The second is a sale to an owner-occupant. So the sale to an owner-occupant can happen following a short sale or a deed in lieu. But ultimately, the idea here is, as we set up the NSO requirements, our larger concept was to not have vacant REO hitting back in the marketplace. So part of this was a few years ago, as we were designing this process, we thought having additional flow and additional flooding of blighted property or fire sale property, these properties flooding back into markets was only depressing the larger the neighborhood areas. So part of our concept here was to say that ultimately putting a warm body is important back in the house. We like that, but having it come back on the market as a sale that was a discounted sale or a negatively impacted sale just adds a lot of pressure to those areas. So we were trying to avoid that. So if you did it through a short sale or deed in lieu, this was the structure we created around that to make that work. There's also a rental piece in there that if you put a tenant in there after a foreclosure, that would also give you credit, which I'll sort of jump into here as we roll to the next slide. This requires leasing it up, keeping a person in the house, helping keep that community afloat by keeping a borrower in the house, not letting it deteriorate more. Gifts to land banks or ULGs were also included. So if you decided that the best outcome for this property at the end of the day was to give it to a land bank, we could give you credit for that. That solution does work for some folks, and we've seen it utilized. Sale to an NSP grantee is one that I think is fantastic, and I think helps with you guys too as well here. So this is a place where some of you may interface with these NSP grantees in HUD, some of you may be NSP grantees. Moving these loans or properties to you all can help in this process. It's an outcome that helps with the investors who bought these. You could be the investor facilitating that deal. So this is an outcome that hopefully you all see as being one that immediately strikes an interest for you guys. Mortgage loan satisfaction, just a payoff there, that counts, that's a positive. And then I think we talked just briefly about, we have a placeholder here for other, and this is the other place where it's not widely used. One example I can give you guys, we had a team say, there's an interest locally in my area for a Habitat for Humanity home. We'd like to give it to those guys. We think they're going to do something good with it. It'll help the neighborhood. So they've been one-offs. That was one example. We thought that would work, and they sent us a letter, and I think we responded that would work for us. So the converse to all this, things that we don't want to happen, I mentioned briefly, we don't want these things coming back as REOs that go listed back for sale in the MLS. We're not looking for foreclosures that result in like a non-owner occupant, subsequent occupancy of the property by a rental tenant. If you haven't gotten that on the flip side or to an owner occupant, those are outcomes we're just not interested in. The retrade piece is not great for us. The sale to a mortgage loan where we can't see what happens afterwards. We can't give you credit if we don't know what's happening beyond that. So hopefully that creates a bit of a look for you guys about what we're looking for in the outcomes. Marlene's going to jump into how you guys actually qualify into this and what they're looking for from you to know hopefully that you've proven to us that you can meet those outcomes. So I'll turn it over to her for a few minutes here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. Yes, so in our when you want to bid on the neighborhood stabilization pool of loans, as Eric said, you know, you do have to qualify, and part of that qualification process is the piece he talked about very briefly, which is the financial requirements, all the certifications in that first part of the qualification form that you complete. But there's a part of the qualification form it's like part 2, and it deals with your capabilities. And what we're really trying to do here when we get your application is just to reasonably assess that the bidder can meet these neighborhood stabilization outcomes, that the 50% of the loans in a pool that they purchase will meet one of those 7 outcomes that Eric just spoke about. Once you go through this process, it's a narrative that you give us, and we review it in our office. So I lead the team that reviews the qualifications on that, and our director, John Lucy, also has a final word on it. But once you do it once, you don't have to do it again for every sale. The next sale, if you want to bid on an NSO pool of loans, you would recertify. But you would the only time you would do an additional in terms of the capabilities part is if something changes. Your servicer change, management agent, or some, I'd say, a major change, you know, to what you're doing, then you would tell us about that change. But once you get certified the first time, you just get recertified for the next time you want to participate, you want to qualify in bidding on the neighborhood stabilization pool of loans. So what we're trying to do is just reasonably assess your capabilities. We do put, when we're looking at it, there's certain areas that we look at, and it's described in the qualification statement itself what you should write about, but I just thought I would hone in on some key things. When we evaluate it here, we do put a numerical score on each section, and we're looking for the bidder to have overall 70 points, but within each of the different factors you see on the screen, default servicing and what have you, we'd like to see at least 50, that your point score in that section is at least 50%. So on the first part, we like to see like at least 13 points on that section, and so on, so forth. So what are we looking for on that next slide? Okay. The first thing on default servicing, and what's great about this is this afternoon we're going to have the industry panels, because many times people team up. One entity might not have all this experience, so they may team up with a servicer who's got the experience. And so when you write up your qualifications, you know, you'd be including that servicer. You'd identify that servicer and their qualifications in your documents. So later on, when we have the industry panels, you'll get to hear more from the industry people who do servicing and asset management, and you'll have that networking session this afternoon. So that will help you. But on the default servicing, we really are looking for quantitative information. We really want to see that the volume of loans that you've been doing. We're looking at making sure that you have the capacity to do this. So as more quantitative information, the dollar volume, what are the strategies that's being utilized now by the servicer to reach non-foreclosure outcomes, such as forbearance plans, workout plans, deed in lieu. So tell us what you're doing or what the servicer is doing, and you know, it's good to put quantify, to put a number on it, to get into the track record. Tell us about your success. What kind of creative strategies the servicer is using to meet these outcome. The more quantitative, the better. And just, you know, your operational efficiency and effectiveness, how is that? So that's what we kind of want to see on default servicing. And I'm going through these very quickly. When you're going through that qualification process and you're doing this write-up, if you have questions, you can always call me. What we do is we review the applications, and let's say that your point, we got you like at 65 points because something is just not there, we don't see it. We will reach out to you by email to say, you know, we reviewed your application, it's deficient in this area. We give you, depending on how much time we have, it could be a day or it could be as much as a week, depending on how close we are to bid day and how many other applications we have, for you to go back and take a look and rewrite and resubmit. So we don't just say no, because our goal is to qualify you, not to not qualify you. We're just trying to, the NSO outcomes are so important. We're just trying to ensure that these bidders, we believe, are capable based on their capabilities that they've shown us in their qualification statement, can meet those outcomes. The next factor that we look at is your asset management capacity. And we want to see that the your asset management company has at least 2 years of experience, you know, monitoring and managing that overall portfolio of assets, that you've got all the license, registrations, you know, your clear description of the current assets under management, those type of things. We want to see that, you know, you've been in the game for at least 2+ years, that you've got a staff that can do this, so in this area, you put in your staff's capabilities, you know, their resumes, org charts, any evidence supporting the expertise of the asset management agent or company, and your asset management strategies. How do you go about, you know, managing this whole portfolio of assets, you know, your history of success in the asset management area, okay? So that's one thing we look at. We also look at your approach, which is a little bit different. The first part has to do with your capacity, that you're established and that you've got the right people on board and that you can take on more. Your approach is like, what is your business plan to achieve these neighborhood outcomes? So in this section, you talk about how you believe you can go about achieving these neighborhood stabilization outcome. If you're proposing to rehab some of these properties because you may be thinking about a rental strategy, then you should include, you know, the budget or so we can get an idea that you understand what's involved in maybe upgrading or rehabbing the home. We want to see like your quality control and your oversight. You know, how do you take care of things like that? Any innovative strategies that you have for keeping borrowers in their homes, you know, your process for working with borrowers, how is that? You know, how do you try to track them down if they're not in the house? You know, how your outreach to find these borrowers, that type of thing. And all of your business processes for completing your critical task. Those are the type of things you would put in this write-up that you would give us on your approach to to asset management. And that will, you know, give us an idea of how you are going about doing that piece. We also take a look at, as Eric mentioned before, at the time that this program was developed, you know, there were a lot of foreclosures on the market, and so the idea was not to have foreclosures languishing on the market. So rather than, if there was to be a foreclosure, we wanted a warm body, you know, family in the home as soon as possible. And so we created this, a part of this NSO outcome, this property management. So these outcomes, this is what they are right now. It doesn't mean that the neighborhood stabilization outcomes may not change as markets change. And if they do, then what we require will change. And of course, we will communicate that out. But right now, we still have property management, REO to rental as an outcome. And so as part of the qualification requirements, we'll also be looking at your property management capacity. That's your capacity to take on additional properties under management. So we want to see if your management agent is managing similar type of properties. Are they doing scattered site, single family, rental management? What's their experience in that area? The number of properties, the locations of those properties. It's great if the geographic location of where they're managing now, they have experience in the market where you're want to bid on a pool of loans. The networks of professionals that they'll be working with. The organizational structure of the property management company, their years of experience, all that speaks to their capacity. Their software, what are they using to keep track of all these properties that they'll be managing? So the capacity will speak to that, not only excuse me, not only do they have experience doing this, but they have the capacity to take on more and to successfully manage that. And then their approach to management has to do more with leasing management and tenant relations. You know, how will they go about securing these tenants? Are they going to be advertising, working with local real estate agents, working with the local housing agency? What type of tenant support system will be in place for like emergencies? That speaks to their approach to property management. Their rent collection process, is it clear? Is it user-friendly? You know, will people know who to contact? Their speed in dealing with issues that come up with tenant issues and tenant relations. How will they engage locally with the community? That should also be in the property management approach. Are they properly licensed in the area where they're going to be operating? So describe for us how you would how that management of these scattered site rentals will work. Your systems for reporting, such as budget reports, repairs, finances, frequency of reports, you know, how often do you check on things, that type of thing. If you're going to have a rehab component, tracking system in place, how will repairs happen, your contractor affiliates, all that type of thing. So that's the type of thing we want to see in the write-up. If you get your qualification statement and you're looking at that and you say, oh, you know, I've got a question here or there, I have my cards, I'll give them out. You can call. You know, we'll be happy to answer your questions so that when we get your application, we'll be able to just go through, review it, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much that other part of the qualification statement. That's pretty important. The first part, you know, you're doing a lot of self-certifying, but this piece, you'll be doing a write-up that we actually review. And so just wanted to go over very briefly what we want to see in that write-up and let you know that we are here for questions when you're doing that. I will be around if you have any additional questions. I tend to talk fast. So this was supposed to take me 20 minutes. And I'm already through it, so, you know, Eric, that means Eric gets to get more time because, you know, he goes a little slower than me. So anyway, so that's it really for what we want to see in that part of the qualification. Okay.
Great, thanks, Marlene. So as we switch gears here again, let's reframe where we are. So part of the discussion has been, so we're still really in month one of the Chevron. So we were talking about this process. So we've now talked to our servicers and we've started that process. We're talking to you guys. We've put out this qualification piece for you all to start working on, and we're assembling data behind the scenes. So this is still all month one. So as you guys are working through this piece, and Marlene's team is approving folks and letting you in, what's going to happen when we let you in is where I want to go with this next session. So as we're talking about, you know, what is it that now you're going to see? You've decided, well, gosh, yeah, this program sounds good. We think we have the capacity, we have the capabilities to do this, but what am I really going to buy here? And what do these assets look like? What are the pools? What are the characteristics of the loans themselves? What is HUD going to show me so I can formulate my opinion? So as we talk about that, this now will shift us, as we're talking timeline-wise, I think month two now becomes in play. So this is going to be the second Chevron. Maybe it's the third chevron on the bottom of the screen, but ultimately this becomes the start of month two. And in month two, what's going to happen is now hopefully we've gotten this information from our servicers. And when I say information, let me walk through sort of all the parts and pieces we're going to get. We'll start with what we call the ALD file. And the ALD file is just our own internal acronym. It's the aggregate loan database is what it stands for. This is the loan tape for sort of talking purposes. This is an Excel sheet for you guys. It has as much information as we can get about these loans in an electronic format for you all, available at your fingertips. And it's generally the first thing we're trying to get out to you guys. So to the extent we get this package out and you guys are now qualified and you're sitting there ready, the first thing generally folks are going to want to do, besides reviewing that legal agreement so they know what the outcomes are, is say, well, what do these loans look like in these pools? So this aggregate loan database, it's a spreadsheet. It maybe has, call it 100 columns wide. So that's 100 data points, like on every single loan. So every loan's going to have these data points. And pieces that I'll point out that are important to you, you know, there's a data dictionary that goes along with them. We've tried to give the investors as much information about these loans as we can. So we give the data dictionary, and it says what the data points mean. And we're going to cross a few buckets in this file. So the introductory few columns as we come across are kind of the basic blocking and tackling pieces, you know, the address, the UPB, just the loan numbers, those types of things. But then we're going to get into some more things that hopefully are of significance to you guys. So we're going to get into when was the last time they sent a payment? How much was that payment for? When was the last contact made with the right person? As we move through that spectrum, we're looking for, you know, have they been modded before? What's the current status on the mod now? Anything that we can tell you about what's happening with the loan, we're going to start telling you. And you'll start to see those pieces. We're going to throw in, do we know if the borrower's employed? If the servicer has that and it's recent, we're going to ask, well, when did you validate that? That's an important piece. We're going to ask the servicers to give us FICO scores. We're going to say, hey, can you pull a FICO score on all these borrowers so that the investors have that at their disposal as they're reviewing these. And it'll build out this file. So the first, maybe half of the file is these types of parts and pieces that we're building for you guys. So the FICOs, the addresses, loan characteristics, all those parts and pieces for the first half of the file. The second half of the file, we've asked all the servicers to go out and have a vendor perform a BPO on every property. So the first 50 or so fields are loan related. The next 50 or so fields are all BPO related. So we're going to take all the BPO information that these providers are gathering and put it again in this electronic format, hopefully for you guys to be able to see. So within that file now you're going to have, data points related to the size of the house, the rooms, all the things you'd expect in the BPO. We're going to include the comps in there, the current valuation, a 60, a 90, a 120-day valuation, as much as we can give you guys at your fingertips this electronic file. We're going to back that up with the actual BPO itself. We're going to put a PDF in the file that has that BPO. So you can go look at the pictures as well. You can look at the comp pictures. But you're able to mine this electronically through our ALD. And I think, let's see. So that really finishes out the ALD file itself. Those are the pieces that we're going to give you electronically. So as you're looking through it, that'll give you a baseline for starting your sampling, figuring out what you want to look at in the loans, if you want to look at all the loans, if there's certain LTV ranges, if there's certain BPO values, UPB values that you want to look through. This will start to move you into a deeper dive into diligence. The due diligence itself, we're going to refer to this whole process as the due diligence materials. So this ALD itself is going to sit on our contractor's website as the way we envision it right now. So the Verdi team will interface with them. They will make this available to you. This ALD will be able to be downloaded to you guys, and you'll have this spreadsheet to work from. And it's going to, in addition to this ALD itself, we're going to have some links that sort of tie into it. And I want to point out a couple of things that are going to link to it in a moment. But in the meantime, I just want to talk about just a couple of blocking and tackling pieces here that are important to get you into the diligence. Again, we're going to need the pieces signed, as we talked about. The confidentiality agreement needs to be signed, and the qualification statement needs to be complete so that we can move you into that. And this process is going to happen through Marlene's team and through this website where we're giving you approval to now look at the diligence. And it may be that we're offering some pools in certain areas, so you may not see everything we're offering in a particular sale. So this might be that you've qualified in for like the New York area, and those pools will be open to you as you come on and you're a bidder and you're investigating the site. Others may qualify for everything, and you're going to see all the loans that are being offered. And the site accommodates that flexibility, so the pools of loans that you're qualified for, you'll be able to download those that you're not qualified for, that you just won't see them on the site. It is available, in theory, 24 hours a day. It's a web-based platform. You can download it at any time. You can pull it down, and after you've pulled it down, you can look at it on your own machines. If you need things from the system, you don't necessarily have to pull down every bit of data. It admittedly is a monster data set at the end of the day. Once we pull this ALD down and the related files, these packages are huge. So you may want to do some sampling. You may want, there's a smaller pool that you're really interested in. You might pull all the data. Others you'll pull parts and pieces. Others you'll do the subsequent sort of, I investigate a little bit, I want a little more, and you'll keep coming back to the site and pulling things down. All that flexibility is there and available to you. The due diligence materials themselves. So now, as we're talking about this, again, the other parts that I mentioned here briefly are, so the ALD pivots a lot of this. Most of this drives the process. But in addition to the ALD, there's some important components here that you're going to want as the backup pieces. And some may argue that they're more important than the loan list. So the BPO itself I mentioned is part of that. The pay histories we're going to give you, so we're going to ask the servicers to go ahead and mine out all the pay histories on these assets, so you can scroll through that. Admittedly, some are better than others. The system, will generate that from their own platforms. Some are more searchable or less searchable, but the histories are there, and there's a lot of important pieces in those pay histories. The servicing notes are also in there. Again, really valuable stuff, available for every loan. All those comments should be baked in there, the dates associated with it. This should help you like look through the file and essentially say, where is this borrower in their current life cycle? What can I learn more about this note? So now we have the ALD, we have pay histories, we have servicing comments, we have a BPO, and then the last piece we're going to put up for you is essentially an image set of files. And within that image set of files, there can be lots of things. Predominantly, we're trying to make sure that they're showing you the note in that file, the title policies in there, those collateral pieces that are important to you. We want to make sure we try to see those images. We do rep to that stuff being available. If we can't get it to you, we'll push the servicers to remedy that and get it to you. In worst case, if we can't get it and we can't complete that task, we give ourselves some ability to take it back from you guys if we had to. So feel hopefully confident that those reps are strong. We're trying to give you the images, but just because an image doesn't exist doesn't necessarily mean we can't get it or make it happen. So those reps will help in those situations. Beyond that, we're also asking for their servicing file to be imaged as well. So they may have many more things in that servicing file that are in there. Some may be valuable to you all, some may not. But ultimately, you'll find those files can be somewhat cumbersome. They're big. Some are searchable, some are not. We try to make it as friendly as we can for you guys. So if you're looking for certain comments within the pay histories or servicing notes, you want to do word searches on that to try to find certain keywords. It is available on some of it, and certainly take advantage of all those pieces that we're putting out there. Okay, more detail on the broker price opinion. So the broker price opinion piece, again, is provided by a vendor. We're offering it as the seller. It really is sort of take it or leave it. You guys are free to use that. We're hoping that it's a good data point for you all, but we're not repping anything around it. We're not, that value is not utilized necessarily in any of our settling calculations. We're hoping it's helpful. Happy to give it to you guys, but if you want to do your own, that's available to you. Certainly, at least one will always come from us, and it'll give you the best piece of data we can give you immediately about the asset. So we don't pull those until the servicers start pulling loan lists from us. So as we're doing eligibility, we tell them, go ahead and get a fresh BPO. So generally, they're not more than about 60 days old. So they should be a good mark in the sand for you guys as evaluation to start with. Again, we're going to capture the electronic pieces of that BPO and put them on the ALD to make them a little more searchable and more friendly. We'll give you the hard copy version in PDF format up on the web. So if you want to look at the pictures, print those out, they're available to you that way as well. We'll switch. We have a piece that goes along with this now. So we've talked about the data set that's in the room. To go along with it, we're going to give you like an offering memorandum. A bidder information package is our coined term. So this bidder information package is going to put our terms and conditions in there. It's envision it as somewhat like a executive summary based on the loan sale agreement and a bit of an overview on the process itself. So I won't terribly dig into that. We're going to get into a little bit more beyond this session, so this morning, and you'll hear more about it later. But ultimately, the parts and pieces are listed here. We're giving you the timeline for the sale that's appropriate, give you a feeling for when things are going to be due, how the dates are going to flow, when the assets are going to flow through our pipeline. Information about the due diligence, closing instructions. You can see all these things are part of our bid package. But this is also where our loan sale agreement is going to come to you guys. So it's really part of this package. And I want to take a minute to talk about, there's two important pieces of our loan sale agreement that come out through this process at this point. So there's the CAA agreement, the Conveyance, Assignment, and Assumption Agreement. So just CAA is our acronym. So this agreement itself this is your agreement with us. This is your counterparty to the federal government on the sale itself. It will include those NSO outcomes we discussed this morning. So that's where you're going to see these. It lays out the reps that we give on the notes. Those reps are essentially a mirror back of what our servicers are giving us. So we are telling the servicers who are given the assets, it's very important for us to make sure these notes fit for you guys, and what we're saying about them is accurate. So we're holding them to a pretty high standard, and then we're mirroring that back to you guys. We're holding ourselves to that standard, saying if things aren't, if they're not as they appear to be, there's a remedy in there for us to either fix or take the loan back if necessary. So hopefully it's infrequently used. We've seen that to be the case over time, but feel confident that we're going to stand behind those. And this CAA is going to come out with this bid package. So again, an important piece of the equation is to get into that, have your legal folks look at it, understand the intricacies of it, because that's where we're going to hold you to the outcomes, the reporting pieces, the reps that we're talking about on the notes, what we're backing up, and how it works. The other piece that's important to note here is that within the process, we have a timing piece that is important to you guys that we haven't discussed yet, which is the servicers aren't just giving us the notes. They remain on their platforms. So the servicers, we're sort of acting as a broker here, right? We're going to show you these notes, but we don't have them yet. And part of us not having them yet is going to create a need to move them from their platform to yours once you're the winner. And in doing that, we can't make it happen instantaneously. So we have what we're bridging that timeline with is an interim servicing agreement. So as you guys become the winning bidder and you're buying notes from us, we need to fill the gap on, well, how do we get the servicing from the prior person to us? And it may take, generally it's going to take something like 90 days from the bid day. So again, we'll dig deeper into this later, but the timing's going to be, for that 90 days, we need an agreement to bind us over that period. So this interim servicing agreement, ISA, you'll see also come out with the due diligence package. So again, important to you guys. This document lays out, what do you want this servicer to do on your behalf for those 90 days it takes from when you buy the notes in an award scenario until you actually get them on your platforms. So again, it's fairly generic. It's a vanilla document. We can't necessarily offer every bell and whistle to everyone. You can imagine having Bank of America customize a waterfall program for everybody in the interim servicing agreement that's a winner is cumbersome. It's hard. But this gives the basic pieces. It shows the idea here is, again, we're going to lay out a baseline. So if you want to negotiate more with the servicers afterwards, that discussion can happen. But it lays out a baseline. It gives the ground rules for how the framework's going to work in that period. And we'll dive a little deeper in that in the session later. I think Emily's going to dig into that with you guys a little deeper then. So I'll leave it at that. But again, these legal agreements are important, and this is the point they're going to come out for you guys. So please, take note of those legal agreements coming out as well. Everybody loves to jump in the diligence, but the legal piece is important. We want to make sure you guys are comfortable with what you're signing to as a counterparty with us. Let's see. Other pieces that are going to come in this bid package that are important to you guys, just so you know, it's going to give all the key context. So again, Marlene, myself, the rest of the asset sales staff that you're going to meet today, the Verdi team who interfaces with us, all these members of the team, you're going to come in contact with a lot of us over this process. So we're going to give you the phone numbers. We want this to be transparent. If you need something, reach out to us. We'll try to help. We'll point you in the right direction. We certainly, we need you guys to make the process work. So we're here to help. Let us know what we can do. So that key contact list is going to be important for you guys, and reach out to us to help you through stuff. So as we get through, let's see, so we got ALD, the mortgage loan pool certifications. I'm going to touch on this briefly now too. So as we're putting these loans out, you're going to get the first insight into what these pools look like as this announcement happens. So you're going to see the announcement from us would say we're going to do 20 regions for NSOs, and there's going to be certain areas. So you guys will know if, oh gosh, those areas sound good to us. We'd like to qualify in for those regions. That first broadcast out will give you a feeling for where that regional concentration is going to lie. And as we get into the bid package, it'll start to lay out exactly what's in those regions. So you won't, at preliminary level, you're not going to know what the loans are and where they are exactly. But as you jump into the bid package, it's going to give you more detail on what went into that pool level and what the stratification, we use the word stratification, just how we put those pools together, how many pools you'd be interested in buying. As that evolves, the piece that goes with it is what we call a document matrix. Because what's going to happen here is that we talked briefly about it. There's many servicers flowing loans into some of those pools. Others are going to be standalone. So if you have, for instance, if you're working on a Bank of America pool that is just Bank of America, it would create the need for you to have one interim servicing agreement. If you're working on a pool that has a half a dozen guys giving loans into the pool, it's going to require 6 individual interim servicing agreements with those teams. So just want you guys to understand that it will expand that way, and not good, bad, or otherwise. Just the nature of the process is that you're going to need more agreements to make this happen. And the document matrix is a piece here that we use to help keep track of that, make sure you guys are signing everything you need to sign. So I don't want to dig too far ahead. I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping us at a timeline that is still before bid day. So can I get a time check?
Time check.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go a bit more. There's a couple more things here that I can just hit on from this high level, and then we'll take a break for you guys, and then we'll fold back into. I think we were a little faster this morning than we needed to be, but either way, let's a couple more pieces here that are important to you that I don't want to lose sight of. So there's a question submittal portion here that we can talk about. So again, questions directly to us, we're happy to answer, but there's also a vehicle here where if you are inquiring to us, we want to keep the playing field level is probably the best way to frame it. So if you're asking questions of us and it's something that applies to everyone, we don't want to necessarily give an unfair advantage to anyone. So you'll see that we do a publishing of those questions generally. You know, if you say, hey, where can I just find a particular file on the website, that's not necessarily a publishable question. But if you say, hey, well, how does this rep work, or how does it apply to a particular group of assets, we'll publish those questions. So as the bid package comes out, we'll generally put out a supplement to it, and the supplements will have these questions that have occurred that we think are helpful to all of you. So in addition to the first bid package, we think it's helpful to make sure you're paying attention to the second and third supplements that will come out over time to those, because one of the things they're going to include are questions. And many times those questions have very important nuggets that otherwise aren't being disseminated, we don't think. So look to the questions. It helps us get that information to you guys. But also know that as you're inquiring of us with questions, we are likely going to put that out to everyone to keep the playing field level. Let's see, the post-sale pieces are going to be in there. Again, we're going to dive deeper into what those requirements are in the later sessions. But again, this document here hopefully becomes this executive summary. It's going to give you a really good snapshot of everything that's going to be required of you. So you're going to find those post-sale servicing pieces in there. It's going to give you some templates, some timelines, the overarching piece of what we're expecting from you. Let's see, due diligence. So, and the last piece I'll touch on here, because we're going to touch on it a little bit more in depth later this afternoon, is there are bid instructions that are going to come with this bid package as well. So the bid instructions, we'll dig into like what exactly it takes for you to make a bid in the session to come later this morning. But again, know that this vehicle, more than anything, is how we're broadcasting information out to you guys. So the bid information package is our vehicle to reach out to you, to tell you about the sale, to tell you how the sale is going to operate, all those parts and pieces. So again, an important variable in the overall process.
Right, but to get that, you first have to qualify. So you won't just get it right away. You qualify, then you get your bidder information package with more details.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just to sort of to add a bit of a summary, and then we'll wrap for
Maybe we
until
could
the
take
break.
some questions since we're finishing up early before our break, right? So we could probably take some questions now if you have any. If not, then after Eric gets finished with a wrap-up, then we'll take the break. But if we can take some questions now since we have some extra time, we
Sure.
can do
So
that.
I'll do a summary. If you guys want to think about any questions, we'll take them in a minute. But so the idea is, again, we've covered this period from we're getting you from the introduction of the sale up to the bid day itself. So as we're talking about, again, this timeline, that's about a 2-month period. So we're going to start with these things like we talked about, announcing the sale, finding the notes, getting our pools together. We need you guys to work on getting qualified in the deal, so as that information becomes available, you're ready to start looking. You'll find that it's a lot of information, and being able to bid, if we give 3 or 4 weeks of due diligence time, it's a fairly short timeline to be able to understand these loans and formulate a price to be able to submit that to us. So preloading yourselves to have the qualification ready to go and be looking out for our email to come out will help, because it'll relieve some pressure on the time of looking at the assets themselves. So again, that first month is important to be engaged with us, work through that process, so as the data comes out in the beginning of month 2, you can spend the month really in due diligence and not in trying to get qualified and come to the table then. So that month 2 is all the due diligence time. It is the time for you guys to digest. We're here for questions. Formulating your bids is part of that, and then we'll leave it as being, it will end with you submitting the bids to us as the final piece, and then we'll determine the best price and make an award from there. So that's this morning's piece. We know we're going fast. There's a lot of material coming at you. So if there are questions now, by all means, we can try to clarify anything we've said. But you'll have plenty of chances. We're going to be here around the room and available all day. Again, tomorrow morning for any other questions as you sort of think on this tonight and think, gosh, I didn't quite catch what Eric or Marlene meant. By all means, tomorrow morning we'll have another session. And those index cards are a great way. Just jot them down. Remember those. We'll take them from you if you want to give them to us. If you just want to ask us on the side, by all means. We're here to help. We want to help you guys understand the process.
Okay, so any questions now before we, okay.
Sure.
We
Yes,
do
ma'am.
have the microphone if that helps.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, thank you for a very cogent and comprehensive presentation of your asset sale program. My question goes to qualification. I'm wondering if you qualify. So I'm with the United Planning Organization. It's a very large nonprofit in DC. When we submit our qualifications, assuming that we team with somebody, are we qualifying as a team or as an organization? And how does that work if we need, well, we obviously have capacity for part of this, and we would seek a partner who would have
That's an
qualification
excellent
elsewhere.
question.
We start there. Thank you.
So I'm going to let Eric take that. I believe you're qualifying, your organization is qualifying as the bidder. You will identify how you intend, your servicer, and how you intend on servicing or your servicing capacity. I've seen people, they're not a servicer, but they identify a servicer in their application as this is a servicer who's going to service, and then they present that servicer's experience and qualification. But you are qualifying your organization as the bidder. Eric and John can chime in.
No, I think
Yeah.
Marlene has it exactly right. If I can certainly see scenarios where you feel like you're part of a team and your piece by itself may not qualify you, and that may be a perfect instance here to have you guys here today to be finding a partner who fills the other piece. So as Marlene went through those, sort of a half a dozen things we're looking for in that qualification process, you may find your expertise is just one or two of those things, and you'll need to find some partners, hopefully, to fill in those others. But if you think you have them all, then we're going to look at it as a full application. We're going to say, does this person who's submitting the application to us have all the skills we think they need to be a counterparty on the agreement? So does that answer your question? Are we getting at the right piece? Okay.
Any other questions from anybody else?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Once again, considering the restrictions on the NSO pool, is this ability to producers pricing, what's the expected pricing and appropriate discounts?
Sure. For those of you who couldn't hear, the question was around, is this an appropriate time to talk about pricing and discounts as they relate to the NSO pools and the outcomes? So generally, we can step back a little bit. I would suggest that we really never discuss pricing ultimately. So our process, we'll get into this a little bit later, our process is a pretty blind process. So ultimately, you're going to bid, and you're not going to know who's bidding against you. We're not going to know necessarily who's bidding. We're not going to know their price levels. But what's going to happen is that as we open that bid day, it's a blind, sealed bid, blind competitive auction are the terms that go in there. And the idea is each of you who are interested in that pool will put your best number forward. And we won't know anything until we close the bid down that day and run the numbers. So to the extent there's not much of a discount to talk about from that perspective, knowing the pricing, but we can tell you historically, we'll show you what we've sold before. So if you all come to our website, we publish the prices for the pools that went out in the prior deals. So I think that is your best way to think about the pools, likely, is to say, well, where were we when HUD offered their last pool, and what did they trade for? So we won't give you the history, like the depth of knowledge on what all the bids were. So they call it cover bidder or third, fourth place bidders. We won't give you that information, but you'll know what it took to win the pool for any of the pools we offered. So we try to make that available and transparent to folks within a couple weeks of every one of our sales. And we'll do it for every loan. We'll publish the winner's name as well as the price they paid. So to the extent that that gives you a place to start from, to think about, generally the NSOs sell for 10% discount, 20% discount, 30% discount. There'll be some regional pieces, there'll be some differences amongst the pools themselves, but at the pool level, we'll show you the price that won. And hopefully you can interpret that to be a guidepost, a guideline for you to start thinking about where you want to be for the next action. Great. Thanks, good question.
It's not on.
Go ahead.
Could you describe the process by which you decide which pools will have NSOs and which will not, and how you determine the proportionality of those NSOs to the larger pool?
Sure, good question. So anybody who couldn't hear, the question was, how are we really determining which loans will be NSO and which loans will be national? So I think It's a difficult decision at the end of the day. It really is. There's many factors that are going into to that decisioning piece. So I'll give you a few of them. Others are sort of internal to our own metrics and views. But ultimately, the idea is, the word neighborhood is in the title there, right? So part of the idea is we're trying to find areas, neighborhoods, that we can have a positive impact on. So that being our guidepost to start that, so the selection would be, we're going to use some internal factors. For instance, we're going to say, is there an overage of notes in a particular area, which are going to lead to higher levels of REO? Is there a need? Is there a reverse inquiry like we talked about this morning? Is there a want in a particular area to an investor might have to say, hey, I have money or I have the capacity to help in a particular area? We're going to use some of our own internal metrics to say we're evaluating this against sort of other alternatives, and we're going to find places where even where we have an interest by some folks and where we have maybe an overage that ultimately we don't know that's going to work from a price level. So again, many factors are going into this. We're going to look at possibly unemployment. We might look at default rates in a particular area. There's a fairly elaborate chart of things we are ultimately considering. And at the end of the day, we're going to put those together. And then the next step ultimately becomes, well, now that we've put these constraints on it, do the servicers have any loans that fit there? So we may find that, for all of our best interests, we found, hey, there's 3 cities we'd really like to do this in. And we reach out to the servicers, and we only find 2 of those cities have sort of a critical mass. It might be that we have 1 or 2 loans in a particular area. And 1 or 2 loans may work, it may not. It might be that just that level is just not gonna find a way to make the process work. So after trying to overlay those higher level constraints about what we're looking for in the pool, we're going to say, do we have assets? And if we do, that becomes the baseline for aggregating those into NSO pools. Did I hit your question, Ed?
Except for the proportionality.
Okay, sure.
How is it that do you measure the sort of proportion of NSOs to the larger pool? I mean, in the August report, it looked like there were 20%. They're roughly 20%
Yep,
of the total
that's correct.
note sales. But it also looked as though the trajectory was increasing.
Correct. I think that's fair. So yes, we look at the overall, and to the extent that we can make them more equal, 50-50 was part of where we fundamentally tried to set this. We found over time that's somewhat hard to meet. So we've been trying to ramp it up, as you see, hopefully, Ed. Yes, that's our goal, is to try to find more that fit there. We like it. We think it's great. But we do find that, sometimes it turns into being a long tail, would be the way we'd frame it, where to get 50% in that pool, I would have to do 400 pools or 500 pools to try to get all those loans. I see you saying thumbs up, but operationally you can imagine that's difficult. So there's a point where we can't quite get there. But if it becomes that 500 is the right number, we need to divide that out and do 50 for the next 10 actions. Then we're open to talk about that by all means. This isn't like we're not trying to leave loans in or out of the NSOs that way. We're trying to find fits, and hopefully we can get the counts and the pools up.
Did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, and as Eric and Marlene talked about before, the last sale we did have some pools that were quite small. The Buffalo pool, I think, was under $1 million. And that was based on some feedback we heard that there were interest in those cities, those New York cities, of smaller pools, and there would be competition there. So that goes to Eric's also reverse inquiry thing. I just want to talk a little bit about those Q&A cards. Those aren't just Q&A cards. If you have any ideas or suggestions, or it's more than just that. It's for any kind of feedback. So like Eric said, we are going to have a Q&A session tomorrow morning to hopefully cover everything. But yeah, it really is a process where we're trying to do as many pools as we can in the NSO, but also trying to tailor them to smaller groups as well. So it's kind of a bit of a blend. Are there any other questions before we break? I think somebody's going for the microphone. She walked past it. Okay, so thank you, Eric and Marlene. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, so this is going to be a slightly longer break. We're still going to reconvene at 11. But any questions? Otherwise, the 3 of us will be standing around. Just pull us aside, and we'll see you at the next session.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get ready to start training session 2. I'm John Lucy again. Also, just want to give you all a reminder that you do have the training materials for session 2 in your folder if you want to look along with that. And we do have the sign-up lists now available for the speed networking out at the table. You can do it after the session or whenever. And I do believe also we're going to have an asset sales table. So if anybody has questions for Eric or Emily or Marlene, they're going to be there during the speed networking session as well. So now, Eric Cribbs and Emily Heller.
Great. Hopefully you guys are making some connections out there. By all means, if there's folks that you want an introduction to, I'll be happy to. I don't know everybody else in the audience yet either, but to the extent that you guys want introductions to anybody, feel free to come up to any of us and we'll facilitate introductions. So really, we want you guys to mingle. Let us know what we can do to help. All right, so we're going to start session 2 here with you guys. And again, let me frame it as being, again, let's talk about sort of the overall timeline spectrum of where we are in the bid process. And we're going to pick up session 2 as being the things that are going to happen from bid day beyond. So this is like now that you've become the winner, you've been awarded a pool, where do we go from here is the concept of these slides. So to recap where we were this morning, the idea is we've now covered this ground of the first 60 days. So month 1, we had you guys come in, get qualified, we sourced all the loans, we've pulled them up, we've put them into a due diligence site for you guys. That's all available. You've now spent the last 30 days looking through that site. And the timeline behind me is actually a point that I want to take a moment to talk about one last time again, because it really is important, I think, to tell you guys. The timelines are fairly aggressive. I mean, this might feel like it's a fair amount of time, but as you guys dig into that diligence, being qualified early and spending the time in the diligence is really the best way to go. Using the diligence time to qualify and then having a minimal time in diligence is really not advantageous to you guys. There's a lot of material out there. Even on a small pool, I can imagine you guys spending weeks on just a small pool, 13, 14, 15 loans, digging through them individually. You could blow through that time quickly. So like I said, the timeline may feel like you have time, but I will caution you guys that timeline moves very quickly, and generally, once we set the bid date, we don't move it. So you're going to be up against a pretty firm deadline. So again, so we're going to start here from, well, now bid day is approaching. What do we need to do? So you've now looked through the diligence, you looked through the loan sale agreements. We're going to need to do some paperwork with you guys. And part of that paperwork is, let's see. I don't want to jump ahead to that. So we'll talk about a bid first. So a bid itself, if we talk about a bid, again, the idea is this is a sealed bid. The bid is a percentage of a price that you're willing to pay for the loan. So we do a mathematical operator here. It's essentially like in its fundamental terms. You're multiplying the UPB, the current UPB on the loan, by a percentage, and that gives us the dollar amount you're willing to pay for the loan. We're going to ask that you guys price the loans individually. We're going to say at the loan level, we need a price for every loan. So we'll do that mathematical operator. We'll multiply them all through. And ultimately what we're going to then say is we'll take all those rows loan by loan, and we'll add that all up, and we'll say that's the price you're willing to pay for a pool. So as we talk here about a bid is the offer to purchase the assets in a pool, we're going to aggregate that to determine who has the highest price. So we're going to pull all those together by pool, and then determine who has the highest overall price for that pool that we're offering. Let's see. The other point that I'll just make here is as we talk about a bid. So functionally, the bid is going to work as being, it's going to come to us in a Excel format. So the idea is we're going to, from a technology level here, on the same site you're coming to us to gain access to the diligence materials, we're also going to provide you with like an Excel template that has each of the loans in each pool. The template's going to be blank and ready for you to place in that bid. So, column A is the loan number again, column B is the UPB, column C is the price you're willing to pay, and the math just pulls out to column D and multiply them out. So as you're thinking about, oh gosh, what do I need to do to bid? We're going to try to give you some of the tools you need. You're going to have to come up with the price, but we'll give you the tools on how to deliver it to us. So you'll come to the site, we'll make that Excel sheet available to you, and that Excel sheet will be available to you, call it a week in advance of the sale. We'll put it out for you guys to populate. And then when we say, okay, bid day is now happening, what's going to happen is on bid day, we're going to open up the bid platform. So this will be, you'll come into a website, it'll be the Verdi platform, you'll come in and you'll enter a module that essentially says, click here if you want to bid on pool 1. And what it'll tell you to do is find that Excel file that you've saved on your computer with all the prices in it, it'll point to that file, and it'll accept that file up into the system. So we're going to take that file onto our platform, and we'll do that for everybody. We're going to leave like a 2-hour window open. We'll take all those files up, and from all those files, again, it's a sealed bid. You won't know who else bid on that pool. We won't know your price as you submit it to us either. So there's no piece in there where we say, oh gosh, 3 bids are in, and now we know already who's winning. It's sealed for us as well. That there's generally a 2-hour window. We'll collect all those, and when it closes, now we've said that's it. No other bids can come in. This is the end of the process. We're going to start aggregating from whatever bids were received, and that's the only time we're going to start knowing the numbers. So as you think about formulating the bid, that's the functionality you're going to use to do the bid. There's no extra points in here. We'll put it out there on the floor now. There's no bonus points for being a non-for-profit. There's no bonus points for participating with us before. It really is a pure mathematical operator, just so you all know. It is, the math is the way we evaluate the pools. So if you're qualified and you submit the highest bid, that's all we're judging on. You had to be qualified, and then it's the highest number. So no double points because you're a non-for-profit. There's no extra deals on the side where we evaluate something differently. It'll be the same for everybody, and the price is what the price is on the sheets. Let's see. So bid terms. So as we talk about the bid terms, so again, there's a little bit of disclaimer language in here. You guys are responsible for the bids. Once you submit it, you're going to be locked into that bid. So part of what's going to happen is as you're bidding with us, you're going to have a deposit. We're going to get into that in a moment. Sure.
You said we bid them specifically per note, right?
Correct.
And then you aggregate the UPB, and that's what you're most interested is the aggregate total. As a nonprofit, we may have separate sources of funds that allows us to be very competitive in specific assets based on census tracts.
Okay.
So we could get very creative in how we bid one. In fact, we might offer a very discounted price, right? Is that okay, or would you inquire about that specific asset and why we were so aggressive on that one?
We will not. So just at a quick answer, no. We're not going to dig in, and we don't have, there's no extra points or decisioning from our side that says they're pricing some one way or the other. It will be your net number that we're going to evaluate on.
So, and that won't come back to bite us at the end, though. So at the end, somewhere down the road when we're doing some kind of negotiating, you aren't going to say, well, you bid $10 on that one specific asset, so lean it some certain way or what have you.
I think fundamentally we can just say no. Part of it is just there's no negotiation really after that I can consider there that would make sense. Ultimately, this is partially where we're going. Once you bid, those are the prices, and they're firm. There's not no bias, no extra points like we talked about, and also we're not holding anything against you. That's just the price for that asset. Once we deliver it, it's yours for that price. So, good question. So as we were digging through that a little bit again, so you're going to be responsible for that bid. So it's a good question. It was timely. So as you put those prices in there, they're going to be allocated to that loan level. And it is the price that as those loans come through our process. So this is a good point for me to open up a discussion about how we're going to acquire those to pull them into you. So we talked about what your percentage would be. There's a maximum in here. I won't spend a bunch of time on that, but the idea is we give a range. You can't bid a negative on a loan. We can't take a price from you that says essentially you pay me to take it. And we also put some maximums in there where it's just part of the overall process. It's a functional piece. So 200 is the maximum. I won't dig deeper. And the settlement price is going to be, so not all these loans are going to come through, and this is sort of a good segue. So as we talk about, we don't have the loan still at this point. We're going to take this bid from you. We talked a little bit about the timing. It's a 2-hour window on a given day that we're going to publish for you. But even at that moment, we're going to evaluate these bids, and we're going to say the best price on that pool has now been provided to me by such and such firm. We still don't have a single loan yet in our possession. So what we need to do with you all is we're going to need to turn on this spigot to start pulling those claims through. And Emily's going to get more detailed into how that happens. But the idea, again, here is the P servicers still have all those loans. And P servicers are the servicers we looked at earlier. Participating is the P there. We still don't have any of those in our possession yet. So you're going to bid on a pool of loans. And say for every 100 loans, our historical rate has been something like around 75 to 80% of those loans are going to come through. So within that universe of loans that you've bid on, not all will come to you. Things are going to move. Again, we've crossed this. They gave us these loans for the sale 60 days ago. We're already up to the bid day. Some of those loans are already moving. We're going to try to keep you guys updated. If any have fallen out and we know about it, we'll pull them out of the pool. It's part of that supplemental process. Hey, we realized 2 or 3 of these have fallen out. We'll let you know up front, because at that point, if we know, we'll be happy to tell you. But there's others we're not going to know, and the timeline's going to be right after you bid, something could happen that these loans fall out. So if in fact that happens, we have the loan level pricing, and it will reallocate just whatever loans you've bid on, we have a price, and whatever loans come through as we acquire them from the servicers, that's how we're going to do the operators to find settlement. So again, I won't dig. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add that generally the reason loans fall out will be because they enter some form of loss mitigation, or they might go into litigation. So as Eric mentioned, generally we've seen about 20 to 25% of the population fall out.
So again, when I talked earlier about eligibility, that piece pulls through here, and part of that reason is, we're very sensitive to that loss mitigation piece. If a borrower, Emily's making a very important point here, if a borrower has reached a point where we think there's nothing left, and we've put it into a pool, things happen. They found a job finally. We could probably put 100 different examples in there. If they do, we believe it to be better for everybody, essentially, to keep it where it is, find a solution, and leave it in the FHA insurance fund, leave that person in the house, find a remedy. So this 20% fallout is important to us because we think that's the best for them. We all know it's hard. I'm selling these loans to you. It's worked for us. It's worked for you guys. But what we're trying to tell you all is that we're going to pull through everything we can, and our historical numbers have been in that 80% roughly range. And we'll do everything we can to get all those through, but there will be fallout. So it's not 100% delivery. So know that up front, that not every single loan, and we don't know which ones they're going to be. So part of this is, as you have a strategy for bidding, you might think, oh, I really like these ones and I paid this price, or I didn't like those so much, I didn't pay that price. Delivery may not match with those exactly. So know as you're bidding, we can't go back, we can't reallocate, none of that can happen. It's whatever gets delivered, that's going to be the price, and those are your loans. So just think about it as you're formulating your bids. That's part of the process. Talked about. So let's get into, now you've formulated your bids. You have your sheet, you're ready to go. We're at bid day. So we're going to operate this from our side. From your side, it's going to be a technology platform. You really just log onto your computer, you're going to go to our website, you're going to prompt that file. And that will, pull up through our system, and we'll evaluate your bid. Behind the scenes, what you're also going to need to do is we're going to need some paperwork from you. So part of what we need is we're going to need to see a signed agreement. So we talked earlier about the loan sale agreement. We're going to want that signed. We're going to want that interim servicing agreement signed too. Those are part of the action. If you want to bid, you have to accept those terms, and you need to sign those agreements. At the same time, we're also going to ask that you put money down, a deposit. So as we get into deposits here, I talked about procedures, so we're into deposits. So as we talk about deposits here, this is an important part of the process for you guys, and we know it's sensitive to you all. Putting this money up, though, is important for all of us, and we're going to ask that to be able to bid, there's a toggle here. And the idea is if your bid is large enough that you cross the $5 million mark as a percentage of your bid, so if you bid something that's 10% of your bid is more than $5 million, we'll cap it there. We only need $5 million for you to bid. If it's less than that, if you're bidding on a small pool for you guys and you're bidding on $1 million worth of assets, we just need 10% of that number. So there are definitely times where folks are not wiring the full 5. There's other times where you're going to bid many pools, and 5 is all we need. So there is a balance. And we recognize that can be hard for some of you guys. So it's something that we should have a conversation about. Think about, we need it to be that we're binding you into this deal, and it's an important part of our process. So we're going to ask that you put money up. Some teams have said, can we find a way to reduce that requirement? Is there other monies we could do? To date, we've had to say no. That's a firm requirement. So we'll work with you guys. We'll talk about it in the future, but for the moment, the bids are the deposits necessary to be able to move forward. And these are the levels we're going to take it in as. So that money ultimately needs to come into us at the same time you're bidding. So as we do our validation, we're going to figure out who submits on these pools to us. We're going to look through, we got 6 Excel files from 6 different teams. We're going to look at their total numbers, and we're going to say each of those teams owed me money. Have they put that deposit money down? And if, in fact, I come to the conclusion through our process on the back that you haven't put that money down, your bid is subject to be thrown out. We have processes in there to try to remedy, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to call you and say I didn't get your bid. It's an important piece of the process. If it's not there, you may have just lost to the next person on the chain. So I want you guys to understand that the deposit is sensitive, and it can be a lot of money. So it's a piece that, as you're talking through this, I want you to know it's an important part. So we're going to validate that is in, and we're going to do, so we're going to check, you've signed the documents at this point. We have a bid sheet from you. The bid sheet shows all your numbers. We're going to evaluate that you have a deposit in-house with us. And once we've done that, we're going to rank the bids. So now we've ranked the bids, and we can see the highest number. We're now to making a bid award. So generally, this is going to happen probably the day after our sale. Occasionally, there's another day lag in there. It just depends on how big our sale action is. But we're going to take in all those bids. We're going to do our evaluation generally on the afternoon that the bids are due. We'll prepare the pieces, do our QC checks, all the things we need to do. And at some point later that day, we generally are taking it to our senior leadership team for an approval. Assuming we get that approval, there's really not a need to be worried about it. The approval happens. The next day, we'll make the announcement that, yes, you're the winner. And in some cases, I'm gonna need you to increase your deposit. So again, this deposit thing flows through. If I call and award you 3 or 4 pools, we need to get to the full 10%. You only needed $5 million to bid up front, but now you're the winner. And I'm going to call, and it's going to be roughly 24 hours. And I'm going to say you need to come up to the 10% level of all your wins. So again, the capital needs here are important. You're going to need money just to bid, and if you are the winner, immediately there's going to be need for money just to hold your place. So Emily's going to get into, it's only 30 days beyond that besides where we're going to start having settlements. And then the money, again, we could feasibly, half of what you bought could be ready to be settled with you guys. So the money needs are going to come up quickly. Again, just like the timeline was fairly compressed on due diligence, you could feel the timeline's very compressed on the back, where if you don't have the money lined up, it's going to be a hard time for all of us. So the award will come into you guys. It'll be a call generally from myself or from John Lucy. Both of us will call and say, congratulations, you're the presumptive winner. We need more money, but assuming we get more money, we're going to have your documents all countersigned by our leadership team, and they're your loans. So congratulations. This is a great way to start the process with you all. We'll take in that additional deposit funds. Back to you, you're going to get an award letter from us. You're going to get a countersigned CAA agreement, the loan sale agreement, and we're going to, if you will already technically have it, the ISAs will then all be countersigned by both parties. So you'll have a full package from us that says, these are your notes, and we're going to turn on the claim function. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to Emily, because part of what's happening now is this pivot. We've now crossed bid day, and we're in acquisition mode. So again, we don't own any of these notes yet, but this is where we begin the acquisition phase with our servicers to start pulling these notes in. So I'll give it to Emily for a little while, and she can talk through just as we're bringing notes in and how we keep you guys up to date, how frequently we're going to do the settlements, and I'll let her go for a little while here.
Thanks, Eric. Right, so as Eric mentioned, once we make the award, we'll take all the loans that we sold and load them up into our claims system to let claims know that those loans are eligible to be paid a claim on. So then the claims payment process generally is about, as Eric mentioned in the timeline earlier, is generally about a 60-day process. So typically we'll have 2 settlements during that process, one generally about out 30 days and then a second settlement out about 60 days. And then once all the settlements are complete, and then you'll have a service transfer date that's generally about a month after settlement date. So from the time, once the claim is paid, then you as the investor are essentially the owner of that note, and you have the P servicer who continues to service on your behalf as part of the P servicer agreement until the service transfer date, again, which is generally about 30 days out past the settlement date. So kind of during that, just to kind of go over a little bit what happens during that 60-day period. So servicers submit their claims on a daily basis. We'll generally send you out an update on a weekly basis on what claims have paid, so you have an idea of what your pipeline is and what's coming in and what you'll have to fund at the settlement date. Once we decide on the first settlement date, we'll send you a list of all the loans to be included in that settlement a couple days prior to the settlement, and a settlement statement which will be signed by yourselves and our office by John Lucy. And then we'll go ahead and have the settlement. so some of the things that happen kind of before we actually settle is there's some documents that we'll need to execute. So for example, we have our consent to assignment. So if you're going to transfer, if as a qualified bidder, if you qualify as a qualified bidder under a certain name and you want the entity actually purchasing those mortgage loans to go into a trust or into a SPE, then you'll need a consent to assignment where we're giving consent for you to assign those mortgage loans over to your SPE or your trust. And just to keep in mind that you as the purchaser remain on the hook to perform the obligations of the CAA, even though you've transferred ownership over to your trust or SPE. And the SPE needs to satisfy the qualification statement requirements as well. You'll also need to execute a power of attorney, which we provide a power of attorney so you as the purchaser can complete endorsements and assignments of mortgages from HUD to the purchaser. So those documents we'll try to complete before the first settlement, so all of that is in place. Let's see, anything I'm missing? I think that's it for as far as the settlement period goes. Once we have settled, again, let me just back up again to the, I know we've touched a couple times on the P servicer agreement. So again, the participating servicer will continue to service the loans, kind of just on an ongoing basis, but they'll just be collecting payments, kind of doing the core requirements of what a servicer would do. Any kind of major things that might happen, if one of the borrowers comes in and wants a loan modification, then they'll have to work with you as the purchaser, and you'll have to give them direction as to what to do. They won't make any major decisions on anything like that on a loan modification without talking to you as the purchaser and technically the owner of the loan at that point.
Emily said P servicer, so this is actually interim servicing agreement, just a clarification. You're talking about the right piece, but I think she verbally said P servicer agreement. So interim servicing agreement is the piece she's talking about that governs.
Right, sorry about that.
No problem.
So then once we have settled, kind of going to, sorry, I'm not flipping slides. Once we have settled, 10 days after settlement, the participating servicer should send you, they're required to send you a collateral file of the mortgage loans that you purchased. And that's required per the CAA.
So I'll jump in there. So again, the idea here is moving parts. So at this point, same in the larger transaction. To date, you all as the investors buying these assets, you've seen the images of the collateral file. You understand what the notes are you're purchasing, but even at this point, you don't have ownership of that. So the pieces that are going to trigger with us that are happening here, as we pay a claim, so we're using our claims vehicle to acquire these. The servicers submit an insurance claim to us, and that's how we purchase the note from them. What our agreement will say is that as that claim is being paid, you're beginning ownership. So that's what kicks the interim servicing agreement into place. But still, again, at this point, that may happen on day one. Our settlement may be on day 30. So there's going to be some time in between from technically where your ownership started, and we haven't settled yet, and you don't have the collateral files. So again, the idea of having a staggered settlement, as Emily alluded to, we'll go 30 days, we'll have a settlement. We're trying not to have those periods elongate terribly. We want you guys to be able to get your hands on the collateral, get these transfers in place, start working the loans as soon as we can. Admittedly, 30 days might feel like too long, but we're trying to make it functional for everybody. But part of those triggers are, as we're working through the settlement side with you all and we're collecting money to move that asset, you still don't have collateral, and we don't want you to be without collateral as you're paying for these loans for too long. So as we're queuing these, the servicers are prepping the files, they're getting them ready for you. So in the best case, it would be really awesome if, as we're settling, they could ship those files same day. It's just, it doesn't really work mechanically. We found it to be that there's always some lag there. But our agreement says that within 10 days, they should be in your possession. So, but no, you're going to be without collateral for a little while. But when it arrives, you should have the collateral. Everybody's, the agreements all back up that if something doesn't ship, if we can't get it to you, there's remedies in there. We're going to work hard to get it to you. But there is a delay, and it's 10 days from the settlement is where Emily was talking about. It will ship to you from the servicer direct. You'll have all your collateral pieces at that point. You've paid for the assets. So we're moving the money, we move the collateral, the interim servicing is in gear. The last piece we're going to need is like the service transfer part. So I'll let Emily jump in again because I think we're getting to her next slide.
Yeah, the post-sale servicing requirements. So, and I think we touched on most of this. This talks a lot about the interim servicing agreement and the responsibilities of the P servicer. Kind of one highlight on this slide that we haven't touched on is there is a requirement, a post-sale servicing requirement, where you as a purchaser cannot foreclose on anyone at least for 6 months post settlement date. So that's just one thing, one kind of important thing to keep in mind. I think that's anything else on the post-sale servicing. I think we touched on.
We'll dig deeper. I mean, part of what you're going to find is the post-sale servicing requirements is really a chapter in all of itself. Particularly with the NSOs, that post-sale reporting ties to the outcomes and is a whole chapter that we'll touch on you guys with tomorrow. That's much more elaborate. We are asking that reporting still come through on the national side if you were buying national from us, but it's not tied to the outcomes. It's more of a information gathering for us. It helps us determine if we're selling the right assets, moving the right loans through the process.
Right, so on the NSO side, it does get a lot more detailed, and on that side, you can't foreclose on anyone, 50% of the population for at least 4 years.
Okay, so as I'm just looking back through a couple cleanup items for bid deposit, if you're a non-winner, we'll send that money back to you. Just notice we missed that. Don't feel like we're keeping the deposit money. Again, we're going to be, we'll make the award to the winner. I talked about that course. If you're not a winner, the money does come back to you. It usually takes us 3 or 4 business days to get it back to you, but we'll wire it back. As part of the transaction is you wire the money and we do the return wire form at the same time. So.
And if you're a winner and your bid deposit is too much based on what you won, we'll allocate back, we'll send you back the portion, so we're holding just 10%.
So, and then as we sort of flow that all the way through, Emily discussed briefly here is the vehicles we use for settlement, there's 2 pieces to the process which Emily's going to send you. So the 2 vehicles are going to be, I'm not sure it's necessarily in there, Heather. So we're going to use what we call a settlement statement and a mortgage loan schedule. So these 2 pieces are just facilitate the transfer. The mortgage loan schedule itself, Excel file, what we're going to do is take the prices you gave us, as we talked about earlier this morning, for each loan, and apply it to the loans that have come through for that settlement. So just mathematically, we're pulling those fields in, we're multiplying them out and saying, for this particular settlement, you said you'd pay X dollars per loan. We add that all up, and that's the amount due for the settlement. So from that, we'll take that over to, this is the mortgage loan schedule, so that aggregates all the different loans. We list them out loan by loan. We'll show it all to you. It shows the claim date, the UPB, the dates of service transfer. So we're giving you that schedule. In addition, we're aggregating that into a settlement statement. And the settlement statement is going to apply some of your bid deposit funds for settlement 1 and some for settlement 2. So we've now collected that money, as we just talked about. We have 10% on hand. We're going to help you guys a little bit mitigate that money just being parked by applying 50% of what we have on hand to the first settlement and then the other half to the second. So again, it guards us from HUD's perspective a bit on if something were to happen, we have some monetary recourse. But at the same time, assuming everything's progressing with our counterparty appropriately, we're willing to not hold so much of that and keep so much money tied up. So you'll see that we're going to allocate that out like at a 50-50 level between the 2 settlements. And if we happen to have a third settlement, it's happened occasionally, there's a tail, some leftover loans. Just because you don't have deposit funds on hand doesn't mean we can't do that. Settlement will just settle for whatever loans come through in the last action appropriately with no deposit funds. The other piece I'll mention is that we briefly just said claim system. So functionally, the reason it's taking this long, I went right past of why we're using 30 days or 60 days here. The servicers themselves are still using our claim system to file these claims, and ultimately it's a platform that they have to log into. They have to load a lot of data points to us, and there's an operational capacity level here. If they could deliver them all in one day, we'd settle with you guys, immediately the day after. There's really we're not trying to delay that. We're not trying to extend that timeline. There's no magic there other than it just takes us that long to acquire them. So what we're doing behind the scenes in those first 30 days and the second 30 days is just working with the servicers to move them through our acquisition system. So the acquisition system is a claims system. They put in the fields. It's approved for payment, not approved for payment. Sometimes they owe us more paperwork. But generally, it takes us the full 60 days to move the loans through the pipeline. So we've seen a distribution that looks roughly 50-50. I can't always say we're going to hold to that. Some servicers are quicker, some servicers are slower. But we'll, in Emily's effort to keep you guys up to date, someone from our team or through our system, we will be giving you kind of that weekly snapshot. So you know, hopefully it won't be a big surprise like, hey, we're getting close to settlement one, we need a bunch of money, or we're getting close to settlement one and we're a little short. Maybe we want to, were we willing to work with you guys a little bit if we want to delay by a week or two to get a few more loans into the that first settlement overall population, we would work with you on that. Can't accommodate everybody, but we understand. We're trying to be flexible, and the flow is important to all of us. So those are just other parts of the mechanics of the process that I wanted to make you guys aware of, that it's not, again, we're not delaying, we're not trying to slow the process down. It just takes us generally 60 days to acquire all the notes. So then the last step of this whole process is we'll acquire loans for 60 days. So now we've done, month 1 and 2 got us to bid day. Now we're through months 3 and 4. We've done 2 settlements with you all. The last month, which isn't definitively a month with us necessarily, will be generally the last piece is the service transfer hasn't occurred yet. So we're providing those loans, the lists to you all. We're providing the list to the servicers. They're going through their motions of prepping files. They're sending goodbye letters. You guys are getting hello letters together, those kind of things. And then we're setting that service transfer. And generally what we say is that if we can accelerate that, if we can tie it to this first settlement and the second settlement, and you want to do multiple transfers, we have no problem. Certainly the servicers and you guys can work together and figure out what works for you. One settlement sometimes is better. A couple settlements work for other folks in the room. But certainly express that to them up front, tell them what you'd like to do, and then that's the last step, to get them transferred to your platform. And we try to put within our agreements that outside date being no more than like 3 months from our bid day. So if it is just one and it's an aggregation at the very end, we try to give like an outside date for everyone, just to say by then we can enforce contractually that it has to happen. So don't feel like, hey, the servicer's holding me out terribly long on these. And in addition, for you guys' knowledge, I'll also mention that within the interim servicing agreement, there's some, if for your side there was a delay, you would have to pay for some of that interim servicing. It's generally performed with no cost for the first, I think it's 30 or 45 days. And then beyond that, some fees will kick in. So be knowledgeable and be aware too that maybe you're thinking, oh, well, we could just delay and take it all at one time. But that may actually, you may incur some costs that you weren't otherwise thinking about on the back. So just a piece to be aware of. With that, I think we've so we have maybe 10 minutes to go, but we've now covered the full spectrum, top to bottom, of the overall process. We've offered these to you, you've qualified, we took you through if you're a winner, if you weren't a winner, we refunded your money. You've now got the transfer, the loans are yours, and then it's really reporting. So that cues us up for our next session. It's going to be about what happens to those loans over the next 4 years with NSOs, what happens to them, making sure we're getting to the outcomes. On the national, it's, again, a reporting action to help us understand, are we putting the right loans through the process? Is this program working for us? So like we did last time, I think we've found ourselves with a little room at the end. If there are some questions now, go ahead, feel free. And
In reference to the 6 months.
Yep.
No foreclosure. There's no exception at all. Like, for instance, if the property is vacant, you can't take possession of it.
Yep.
Unless you foreclose. So you gotta wait 6 months.
You do not. Great question. Happy you brought it up. So vacants.
And I should have touched on that. I apologize. Yeah, if there are extenuating circumstances that you could foreclose, and that just has to be reported to HUD.
Yeah, so the language, you can read it. You'll see it in there. Where we want it to be that the 6 months is blocked out for you all to try to engage with these borrowers, right? So the idea is, I just told you it's going to take me 60 days or 90 days to get them to you guys. We feel like it's going to take you guys 60 days or 90 days to get engaged into what's the status, reach out to these folks, get some feedback from them. Where are you? What do you want to do? So we want this first 6 months, the way we've hopefully set it up, is that gives you some time to get it going, to work it out. But there's going to be other cases where at first call, the guy on the other end says, hey, I just want out, I'm done. And that could be an extenuating circumstance. This just isn't going any further forward. Others, like you mentioned, it's vacant. You can't, there's nobody there. It's abandoned at this point. So again, we're asking on the, On the NSO side, think about the implications of that. If okay, you're going to go ahead and take it to foreclosure, we get it, that makes sense, but that is going to be an outcome that unless you turn into a rental or you do some of those other actions, it's going to count against you. So yes, it may make sense, hey, I need to do this now, but know that that could have a negative impact on you. On the national side, sort of similarly, we're going to just ask that you guys give us some color on what happened. So we don't want anybody essentially saying, oh yeah, we couldn't find anybody and we foreclosed on everybody. That's not how the process is supposed to work. But to the extent you say, hey, we sent 50 letters and I called them 100 times and there was nothing else I could do and we tried, that will probably give us enough support to realize what you gave it a good effort.
In order for you to get that NSO credit, it has to be a rental for 3 years. So there is a time limit on that. So it's not that you turn it into a rental and then it's now vacant after 6 months or whatever. You get that NSO credit for the rental after 3 years of it being a rental.
Good, and we'll dig deeper with you guys on some of those pieces too, as we talk about reporting and the way you're going to get credit. When Marlene talks about that session a little bit more, she's going to say, the only way I'm going to give you credit is if you can show me that for the 2 years or 3 years you lived up to what you said. Sort of similar with the reperformance. If you can't show me 6 months of reperformance, I can't give you credit. Yes, sir, another question.
Do you ever do any direct sales if a unit of local government has a revitalizing area, they're cleaning up the vacant properties, and they would like to include non-performing loans to help revitalize that area? Do you consider those kind of proposals?
Sure. So the question was, would we consider a proposal from like a unit of local government, particularly with a damaged area or vacant area that they may be trying to have an impact on? Absolutely. We'll take those reverse inquiries from you guys, and knowing that there's an interest for those. We're happy to explore with you, and we have done those in the past. We can tell you that there's not as many compared to our overall sale, but we have engaged with the units of local government, and we're engaging with one at the moment behind the scenes. So we'd be happy to further that conversation. Feel free to talk to us about it. But those sales, for those of you out there, definitely talk to us, make us aware. But they generally are not. They're not announced the same way the others. Where we talked about this on the other timeline, they run on a sort of its own platform. It's a different set of. The mechanics are going to be very similar, but we're going to run it on a different timeline. We're going to have different fundamental pieces on how we run it. But yeah, love to hear about your interest and where we could find a match. Yes, sir.
There's a process in place for that. Basically, we're trying to formalize where we would give you a template to fill in a term sheet of what you were talking about. It includes some of your capital that you have, how many loans you're looking for, some of your partnering if that's possible. So yeah, if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can make sure you all get the template to look at to what we need to have before we discuss a direct sale.
Okay, another question?
Considering because of the historical information for certain groups, have you thought about a possible set aside for the NSO as opposed to having a competitive process where nonprofits bidding against other nonprofits bidding against for-profit groups?
So the long and short is yes, we've thought about it. I can't say that we've found a way to make it work in all cases yet. So part of it, you can imagine, and we'll be frank with you guys, part of this is as a seller, part of our duty to the fund is to try to maximize the price, right? So we have some duties in there that we can't necessarily just ignore. But to the extent that we could balance that with some sort of mission piece, it's a position that we've taken with many of you to talk about. I don't know that we've found common ground yet, but the idea is we have to balance those things. And if we can find a balance, there may be light at the end of that tunnel.
And the folks in senior management are looking at that idea as well. The idea of doing nonprofit only sales, that sort of thing. So that is something, but also put that on your card. We would love to get that feedback to everybody.
Yeah.
So.
And we again, so the idea is I don't want to balance it all on a mathematical side either. The things that you guys are out there doing to help folks and to help the world and the mission piece that you guys have, that we're happy you guys are here because we share the same goals there too. So it's if we can find common ground, there absolutely is a willingness here to try to work towards that. Yes, sir.
I'm curious on historical data. Just say last schools that were sold. What percentage of nonprofit bought schools from HUD over the last 12 months?
So over the last 12 months, we do publish the results. Go ahead.
Repeat the question first, if you could.
The what?
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Sorry. So the question was, how many non-for-profits over the last 12 months essentially have been buyers from us? And I think the short answer is, I don't know if
don't know if anybody has technically won in the last 12 months. Over the course of the entire sale program, we have had winners that are not-for-profits. One of them is here today. A couple of them are actually here today. One is part of the panel this afternoon. You'll see that Scott Fergus, who will be moderating the panel, has been a winner that fits the description you're talking about, and he's won quite a few loans from us, quite a few being thousands. So, you know, he's got some really valuable insight. So this afternoon session, we're hoping you guys really enjoy because he's got some of that knowledge. In the past sales, I'll ask you guys too to be proactive here, because we felt like in the last sale too that we did try to make the pool smaller. You know, we're trying to help you guys. We're trying to find ways to make it work. And ultimately, we didn't. It wasn't for lack of wanting to award. It was that we didn't have folks come to bid. So, you know, part of this is to reach out to you guys, try to make it so you understand what we're asking for and who you can partner with. And, you know, if you come to bid, by all means, we'd love to award them to you. There's certainly no problem there awarding them to you, but we need the bids to come in, and we need you guys to qualify and take a look, and hopefully we can find common ground. Yep, one more question back in the corner. Okay.
The first question is regarding the dates in foreclosure.
Sure.
Are you looking at 6 months from the time of initiating the foreclosure action, or 6 months from the time of actually completing the foreclosure action?
Good question. So we'll take the first one. The 6-month prohibition around foreclosure is really the question. How do you measure the 6 months, to paraphrase? So the idea is, no, it's not 6 months from the initiation of foreclosure. Some of the loans we might be selling have maybe even been in foreclosure more than 6 months. It's not you don't have to be that the foreclosure has been initiated, but many of ours have. But this is going to be from, I can't remember if the trigger is servicing transfer?
Settlement date.
From the settlement date. So the 6 months isn't going to trigger until we settle up the loans with you guys. So, and that'll be, the 6 months will be judged from that point forward. So it could be 8 months already, so you'll have 14 total months. It could be that it hasn't started at all, and you go from there.
Second question, do you count the deed in lieu the same as you would count a foreclosure in the 50% package?
So the deed in lieu has a combination piece, and I won't dive super deep into it. There's a slide on it from earlier, and I went over it kind of quickly. So if you flip back to, if you're looking at, this would be slide, gosh, I have it as 21. I'm hoping that I have the most recent version. But NSO outcome number 2, sales to owner occupants, will touch on that piece where deed in lieu is mentioned in that process. There you go. Thank you, Heather. So the deed in lieu piece there, you'll see that the deed in lieu doesn't immediately make this an acceptable outcome just because you did a deed in lieu, but what you do next will be part of how we're evaluating that, right? So the idea is, now you've taken it in. So if you put it in a rental, great. If you, you know, if you sell to an owner occupant here, but you don't have to list it, there's some pieces here that we've mechanized to try to make that work. But just the deed in lieu action in and of itself is not enough to give you credit. Okay, and that question was, if I didn't repeat it, was how is deed in lieu counted? Is it for or against me in the NSOs? Go ahead. Marlene, you want to add? Marlene's will help expand on that one a bit.
So credit, you do a deed in lieu and then sell to an owner occupant, or a short sale to an owner occupant. So under the way the program is structured now, those sales to owner occupant count if the way you got to the owner occupant sale was deed in lieu or short sale. The foreclosure, if you had to foreclose, you can get it. We don't really give credit for foreclose. We definitely, because it's, you know, but the only time you can get an NSO credit if you foreclose is if the next thing you do is turning into a rental, okay? But to get the NSO credit from that deed in lieu or short sale is to sell the asset now to an owner occupant buyer.
And I think, I hope I'm not speaking too far out, but Marlene, could it also be that if you did a deed in lieu, but then you do a gift to a land bank afterwards, that would also
yes, that
ultimately
would also
get you to the
count,
remedy?
yes.
So yeah,
Very
there's
good, yes.
those are in sort of the combination pieces in there, but again, the idea is that in and of itself, just a deed in lieu action does not go all the way to where we need you to be.
We can do your one last question if you have it, sir.
Yep,
then
one
we're
more, and
gonna
then we'll.
wrap it up.
How do you qualify a land contract from NSO credit?
A land contract? Yes. Maybe I'll have to hear more from you. I'm not sure, and I know exactly what you mean.
Wholesale financing.
Okay.
We might need to.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to dig into that one. I'm not sure. Why don't we? We'll talk after. You and I can. We'll figure that one out. And to the extent that that applies to everybody, we'll put back an answer for everybody. Just let you know what we came up with.
Okay, so thank you all. We're going to break for lunch now. A couple of reminders. We still do have the sign-ups for the speed networking out at the table there. Panelists who are going to be on the afternoon panel, if you could be back by 12:45 to make sure that we can get you all set up. We do have evaluation forms in there, so just so you make sure before the seminars end, if you want to fill those out. And also, when you come back from lunch, just give a little time to get through security. I think you're going to want to go through the same place you came earlier today. And we're back at a 1 o'clock session. Thanks a lot.